Good morning. So let's start with second session or first session. Start with the conference. Build to last. Unusual topic. Last year I did microservices with, I think it were microservices, one of the most asked questions. Introduction about me. I really enjoy still Java and more JavaScript. Why? Because nowadays JavaScript becomes more and more like Java, so it almost looks like Java. So I'm working with Java and JavaScript from 1997. So I'm freelancing in 1997 and started my work as developer Java, JavaScript, C++ in 1995. I think before 1995 I did a little bit C++. And since then, just Java. Okay, by the way, if you have questions, ask anytime, so you don't have to wait until the conference ends. Some blocks, of course. If you have any remaining questions after the talk, first Monday of the month, I answer everything live on and upload it to YouTube. So there are, I think it's going for 3 years already. Some workshops, you have them in the agenda. And this is my only slide. And actually, this is actually philosophy of me being a developer. So if something becomes mature, it becomes boring. And you can observe this for several years. To give you an example, in one project, this was, I think, 8 years ago or something, there were two teams, one web team, which created internet apps, and the other team was a back office team, which created Swing apps. And everything worked in the Swing camp, but the developers were unhappy. And everything worked that didn't work in the web camp, and everyone was excited. So there were task forces and no sleep and so forth. As I said, it was several years ago. And I asked, the young developers in the Swing team, so what's the problem? You try to move away from Swing, but everything works. And after some conversations, they told me this is the problem. We are never heroes. Regardless what happens, now we implement a feature and it works. So everyone expects that it works. We do it works, and we go home, and we are completely forgotten in the corner. And the web guys are the hero, because there's always something happens and something breaks, and there are fixes and whatever. So what we did, we just changed the teams, of course. We swapped the developers, and the more mature developers were happy with Swing. And the young developers were very happy with web component development. You can observe the same in virtualization. No more is excited anymore that we can spin off 10 virtual machines on my laptop. I think 5 years ago, everyone did it here on stage. And Docker becomes also similar, mature. I think no one talks about microservices and Docker anymore, rather than what? Probably unikernels, probably, or serverless, which becomes boring in 3 years again. So this boring in maturity, I think, is a very good thing. And the last time, this more funnier. So I'm also working with some startups. In one startup 2 years ago, they really wanted to have Scala for a microservice. So okay, just then do it and do Scala. Everything else was Java. And actually, recently they asked me whether they still need Scala. I say, I never told you to introduce Scala. I mean, why? And they say, okay, because we think Java 8 would be good enough. It's like, yeah, if it is, I mean, go away or not. And they ask me, you really, no problem, no. Actually, you forgot why you introduced Scala. You just wanted to have it without any explanations. Now, I mean, it became boring to them. So they're playing with Scala for 2 years. And now just would like, to implement the business logic, and they are set. And that's my observation. So, as I started with Java, I started, as I said, 1997. The problem with Java back then was the same like the problem with JavaScript right now. There was, 10 frameworks per week, and all the frameworks were completely different and completely incompatible with each other. And all the application servers back then, we had around 50, were completely independent from each other. And I think I know it was impossible to implement something for one application server and deploy it without any recoding or whatever, not even servlet to the other one. So web XML was not even invented. So it was impossible to implement a simple servlet and redeploy the servlet between application servers. It was really exciting, But now I wouldn't be exciting anymore, to making servlet work on Jetty, Tomcat, and Whitefly, for instance. It's just boring. So I'm just, put an annotation on a servlet and it just works. So in meantime, my strategy back then was, of course, Java EE. So if I learned J2E on Java EE, I forgot all these, stupid vendor extensions, just focus on the standard. And then as a developer, I have the chance to survive, and also my clients, if they are not dependent on strange ideas back then. Strange ideas, what I mean by then. I don't know whether you remember there were application servers half in C, half in Java, or half in C++ with really strange, persistence and caches or whatever. Completely different what we have right now. And if you are not depending on this stuff, it is more boring, but you can sleep more because more people are using this. The more people are using it, it's more boring, and you can sleep more. And for me, sleeping more is more fun. So I think backend is solved, at least for me. Java EE works well enough. It is portable. It is perfect. It is boring, which is a good thing. What I found out last year, just rewatch my talk, I implemented a microservice with the backend. The problem is, what do we do with the frontend, right? So in frontend, we have React, Angular, Ember, Vue.js, Angular 2, which is completely different from Angular 1, and everyone still believes it's just an upgrade. And we have Polymer, web components, so how to deal with the frontend. And my talk is split in two parts, backend and the frontend. I would implement the backend first without a lot of explanation because I did it several times, and then focus more on the front end, and you can ask me questions, challenge me, or whatever. So let's implement the boring backend. So the most boring stuff, but is actually surprisingly popular, is Maven. 5 years ago, Maven was, I would say, was said to be heavyweight or whatever, but right now I ask developers, and it seems like everyone likes Maven, which is a good thing. And in particular with Java 7 or Java 8, it looks like this, so no one cares whether we use Maven or not because it's always that short, should be that short. And the nice thing is, if you probably know, Java 8 is around the corner. So if Java 8 will come out, everyone is excited, and what I will do, I will replace the 7 with the 8. It's exactly what I did if 7 came out. So I replaced the 6 with the 7, and we just move on. So, of course, you can then use useful features, but it's not like everyone is waiting, for Java 8 and refactoring everything without any reasons. So this is what I say the major or boring way of developing, and what you should focus more on features and make your clients happy. If your client's happy, you also will be a little bit more happy. So this is what I can tell you. And all the new frameworks and all the stuff repeats every 5 to 10 years anyway, with different names, of course. Okay? Any questions? No questions. So if yes, you have to shout because you're a little bit dark. So not the audience. So PL, DevOps, let's say fun is the app, boundary and fun resource. And what I would like to do is just to implement a simple service, call it microservice, nano service, or whatever service. We'll change the name in the next years anyway. And JSON object, and it will just fun. And this is going to be get, return JSON, create object builder at DevOps and fun and build. So this could look like this. And so what it means, I use JSON object from Java 7, not even Java 8. It will never change. I can replace Jackson with Jettison with Moxie. Format will remain the same. Good thing. So, but this is too simple. So we just need two more classes to have a complete microservice. And I would like to implement what's a class called fun service, which is a terrible name, but I don't have a better idea right now. And this is going to be a little bit faster. So this is the stateless, and this thing, and this is boundary, is perfect. And what I also would like to do is to introduce a class, and this called the class is the entity, and this is the fun class, and this has a name, not name. What do we need? Content. And a constructor, constructor with the content. and a method. And this is something unusual. Lots of conversations to JSON. So hence we don't know, or since we know, the only interface to the outside world in modern apps is REST. Why not to be depending on REST, JSON, or whatever? So what I can do right now, I will just create the same what I did before. Create object builder, add, and let's say here, what was it? Let's do this content, and build. So this is standard. And I don't need any mappers, DTOs, everything is gone. And of course, the question is what happens if I rename the field? Nothing happens, you see, nothing. So I don't need mappers and DTOs or whatever, so I'm set. So, and to make it more complete, this fun service would return the fun and return new fun and say here devox PL, of course, or better name would be 33 degrees, right? Exactly. So stateless, add inject, fun service, fun, and here would be something like fun punkt, punkt is dot in German. So this to JSON. Okay, so this is set, this is enough. So what I wanted to show you, this is the simplest possible microservice in Java 7. It would run on Whitefly, Tommy, whatever. And the interesting part is we only have one dependency. Will never change. We get Java 8, we replace 7 with 8, Java 9, 8 with 9. It will always compatible. Why? Because nothing disappeared so far from Java E. So and this is boring. So there will be no migration projects anymore. And this is very true since Java 5, there will not really be a migration project anymore, except someone used, vendor-specific extensions, which is always a bad idea. Okay, backend done, and let's see whether it actually works. So I would like to build that. So, this is Maven build, and then run it. And if there's time remaining, I would just also deploy it on Docker, but I did it several times, so Docker should also work in milliseconds. No problem. Some problems here. What's wrong with my browser? Browser crashed. This never happened. Because the internet disappeared. This is cool. Localhost 8080, what was it? Fun, hopefully. Resources, fun. As you can see, Java always works, browsers not always. So what? I cannot even kill it. So, but cool. I have multiple browsers. If Firefox will go away, I can launch Safari. In Safari goes away, we should stop the talk. So, but we have here. We got it. Now the question now what to do with it. So I can just go curl and get this back. And the point is, if I build it, it will take, I don't know, 1 second with everything. And this is what we do in our projects everywhere. This is a microservice. It's deployable in the cloud. If you don't believe me, go to the YouTube channel. I did it several times. In 3 minutes, you can create something like this and push it to Oracle Cloud, Amazon Cloud, or whatever cloud you have. Questions? No. What about the front end? And so the front end, similar approach. So what I would like to do, first choose the right folder. This is important. Select. Still running. The Chrome force quit. Unkillable. Cool. Okay. So index.html. This is HTML5. And what I would also like to do is to create a JavaScript file. New JavaScript file. Where is it? And call it fun.js. So let's imagine the following. So what we can have is, first I have to load a script, and this is a good idea to load it at the end. By the way, I only use, for HTML and JavaScript, I use NetBeans right now because it's quicker. Usually I use Visual Studio Code. If this is a standalone project, it's also a nice editor from Microsoft, but it's open source and nice support for JavaScript and HTML5 and CSS. So, and this is fun.js. So now it's loaded. And what I would like to have is, let's say, input type text, and this is going to be input. Let's do this, and properly on button is also nice. Buttons are all click, and one output. So we had output, input. Okay, good enough. So now what we can do here, class fun, and say let fun equals new fun. And what this is ECMAScript 6 is ES 2015, and it is available in most browsers without any transpiling. So you can use transpilers. What transpiler means, it would take this and create the old JavaScript, but over time the transpilers will disappear, and the hope is all modern browsers will just understand this out of the box. And this looks and feels almost like Java and becomes more and more like Java over time. So there are small, of course, small differences, like there is a constructor looks like this, and I can say console log hey Joe. So if I would start with the Chrome, because I don't know the, just do this again. Now it works perfect. So the fun is loaded in so input. So, and what I wanted to have, not my REST interface, rather than the page, and as you can see, hey Joe. So it loaded the page, not a big deal. It's okay, what you're showing me right now, that we can write classes with JavaScript. But what I could do, I could say init UI, and say this init UI. And now I can say this, for instance, input text equals document query selector, and let's say input. So this is a little bit dangerous because there can be multiple inputs. Right now there's only one. It works. Usually what you should do, of course, say id equals what could be fun, of course. So that would be this dash fun. So, and the query selector is available also in most modern browsers, and it basically kills jQuery. So, okay, jQuery is more than that, but the main idea of jQuery is incorporated in the query selector. So it's very easy to identify, to find elements by name, by classes, by path. So query selector is absolute standard, and what it means absolute standard, it will never disappear and probably never change. Never change, I mean, I don't expect to change in the next 5 to 10 years. Because it's in the browser, the same as it was in Java EE, the same boring stuff as in Java EE. So if I have this, I could of course say this input text, and say on key up equals event, and say console log event. So just go this route, reload this, and as you can see, I can receive the events with the key. So what I could do, I could say e.key. Why I know this? Because it is here, and just do the same. Oh, just do the same and see. Oh, didn't save that. It's not saved. As you can see, I have the keys. So now I could say nice thing. So what I could also do, I could go here and say this output equals document dot exactly. Query selector, and let's go with the output. So I have the output element, and I could say this.output inner text or inner text or HTML equals e.key, I think. So I do the same. As you can see, so this is the keys, a kind of how to call it, data binding. And what I could also do, I could of course say not on key up rather than on change. So and now it will be a little bit different. So if I go here, undefined, this is not key, I think is target value. Let's see this. ISDF. So now it waits until something happens, and on focus lost, it updates the values. The thing is, what I'm showing you right now, this on change, on click, or whatever, is a part of the browser DOM. This is not Angular, this is not Ember, this is nothing. It's just absolute web standards, and all the frameworks have to use it anyway. So what you get from that, if you write such a code like this, it will last forever. There will be no migration projects. It will work on mobile, on standards, and whatever. And if you look closely on this is not that different what we did previously with Java, Wix, or Swing. So actually, some migration projects did migrating from old Swing to HTML5 without any external frameworks. Now you can say, okay, but it's boring what you're doing right now. How to communicate with the backend? Let's try that. What I could do, I implement a method fetch fun. And this fetch fun, first I need an URI. And this is the URI. So what I could do, there is actually a standard called fetch. So and this fetch. So by the way, there's a trick if you go to the internet. And can I use this one page? And we can check, for instance, the fetch. As you can see, the fetch is available everywhere except Internet Explorer 11. So, and Opera Mini. I mean, Opera Mini is not a true requirement. But in some of my enterprise projects, actually, it is enough to support already Edge and Chrome. So this is my current project. This is completely fine. They don't even have Edge, AE right now, either Edge or Chrome. So the question is, what happens if we have to support Internet Explorer 11? And there are polyfills. So the trick is, if you search now for fetch polyfill, you will find a GitHub project. And this GitHub project is a polyfill. What it means, it makes the fetch work for all the browsers. In this case, Internet Explorer 11. So what it means, instead of using framework, what I try to do is to use the standards. And if the standards do not work or all the browsers, I use polyfills. And if the browser disappears, I delete the polyfills. So the application, the application becomes smaller and smaller and smaller and faster over time. And we did several projects this way. One project was in the internet, and it was extremely crucial to be extremely fast. Of course, the more framework code you're loading, the slower it gets, and we use standards. This and web components, which I'll show you at the end. Questions so far? No questions. Everyone excited, I guess? So fetch. This was the URI, and this is actually not necessary to have the full URI because we know that we are loading from the same resource as the server, and then promise already built in. So I can say the response is console log response. Let's see what happens. So I will reload the thing here. Is it saved? And not only reload, I will have to invoke it. Even in JavaScript, you have to call the methods. So as you can see, I got the response from the server. So nice response, but I have status. Something happened. I have the headers here, and can look what the headers are. So, but it's getting even better. So I could say this is nice, but I would like to have this as JSON. And now go to then and say console, for instance, JSON. And by the way, this fat arrow is like the thin arrow in Java. If you do a little bit JavaScript this way, it will confuse Java and JavaScript, but over time it will go away. But right now, log and JSON. So now if I repeat that, I have the JSON, content 32 degrees. So what I would like to have is a method update output. And this is the content. And this would be this, for instance, this output in a text equals content dot what dot content. Let's say payload is better. Dot content. So and this would be this update output. So do the same, and you see here, this is from the server. Without any external dependencies, no framework, standard Chrome. So the question is, of course, how much code will I code here? So in one point of time, I cannot just have one class here. And of course, what you could do, you could add additional JS. This is actually the approach right now. The problem with that is it's a little bit too early. So I'm using Chrome, let's say, exactly, 59, and this is the official build. Chrome 60 and Firefox 34 will support import, like the Java import. So what I would be able to do soon, and actually even right now, I could go here and say the following: import service from, like this, service.js, and it would just import whatever was exported in the file, and this is part of the standard. So now, of course, you cannot count on not released Chrome 60 right now. So what is the polyfill for that? For instance, a framework like Webpack, which will bundle all your stuff. So we could use Webpack, and Webpack will search for all the imports and create one large file. But in one point of time, next year, we get Chrome 70 and Firefox 50 or whatever. It is no more necessary. So and the Webpack, if you process this with a bundler like Webpack, for instance, it will last forever because it will create one long file which will be supported by all browsers. But you get the idea. Instead of using some require stuff or whatever no one knows, I would rely on the standards. And what the standards are is actually absolutely clear: is W3C or what WG. This is the what working group. They define the standards. And whatever frameworks are on the markets, they have to use the same underlying and HTML and DOM API, because they are running in browser. It's the same story as whatever web frameworks I'm using in Java E container. 99.9% of all frameworks are relying on servlets. So if I know this is okay, then I can use servlet filters and so forth. Okay, cool. So what we discussed right now was what we did actually. We have asynchronous communication with the backend using fetch, which is absolute standard. And what we also have is a nice UI. But actually, the UI is not that nice, and you would like to have it centered somewhere, or not somewhere in the middle, which is I think the most tedious task in HTML5 to center something. And so what I would like to use is to use a style sheet, and I don't have it. So I will just create one and call it style. And what I could do, I could say body. So, and of course, here, save it. Saving is always the problem. So save style.css. So, and now I can say display is flex. So and the flex is already like I think is grid layout in Swing, similar to this. And where is my can I use? Can I use flex box is the name. Flex box. And as you can see, I know Internet Explorer is not a nice green, but there's a green with bugs. But this can be used everywhere. And I actually always use Flex, and I ditch all the CSS grid frameworks. I don't need it anymore. Flex is the absolute standard. And on that note, the next, I actually the proper title of the session would be the Javaistic way of developing HTML5, because I try to find a standard first and then apply it. For CSS, there is CSS Next, so the next hack. And what is CSS Next is, you could use the future features of CSS, and with polyfills. And if the feature will be released in all browsers, you can ditch the polyfill. So we don't need any pre-processors, post-processors, whatever. We rely on standards right now and hope that the application gets smaller and smaller over time. Exactly what happens in Java in all my projects. Okay, so we have, this is a CSS Next, also interesting projects. And what you get already right now are CSS variables, for instance, for free. This is actually the main reason why most projects use how it's called, less or SAS. Okay, questions? Amazing, no questions. The first talk, no questions. In Java E, no talks, lots of questions, but it's obvious. This is not that obvious, and no one asks question. Okay, cool. What do we have? We have the CSS. Okay, now we created the display flags, and justify content is center. And the next one is align items is also center. And this should be enough to do this, which is not exactly what I want to do. Have center, justify content, align items. Oh, it's called? No. Center is okay. I'm not sure with the align items. And I think it could even. Oh, the service. The problem is, of course, this does not exist. This was just an idea. This won't go in. And token import is not supported in this, of course. So I will have to remove it. I forgot this actually. So now it looks almost better. So what I did here is style, body, display flags, justify content, align item center, and a link rel style, but it doesn't fly. So do it again. It's a pity. It should be in the middle, but look terrible. But you get the idea. So imagine this is in the middle. So it cannot load the CSS, I guess. Wait a second. And the flexbox, what it is, you can say. Still no. Okay, then see whether it works at all. This is default. So it works somehow, okay. This works. And if I do this, it should be in the middle. It isn't. Yeah, just remember Flexbox is supported everywhere. What Flexbox is, you can just design one row on one column, and the basic idea is you specify the attributes on a container, and then attributes on the item, and you can say, this is larger, this is smaller, and whatever. But this is already more or less responsive. So this would be in the middle. What I forgot, there is one justified align items or justified. This would be centered. And there is something else on the horizon. It is called CSS grid. And the CSS grid is something like grid back layout. So it's very powerful grid where you can pixel perfect pixel perfect align the items. The problem is CSS grid. Exactly. The grid layout, is getting better, but is not supported everywhere. So pretty well, but this is a little bit buggy. But it's getting, you see, released April 11, 2017. And if CSS Grid comes out, I think most of the CSS Grid frameworks are no more necessary. So you can fully rely on web standards and ditch other frameworks. So what it means, what we have already in Java EE right now, most of the wars are kilobytes. So if you don't believe me, go to the interviews on my blog. There are large projects, and the wars were well below 1 meg, 600 kilobyte or whatever, because they only contain the business logic, no external frameworks. And you can have the same in web. So what you get, of course, your assets, JPEGs, whatever, they are, of course, large. But you don't need anymore any additional framework. And particularly not for smaller apps. OK, I was told to watch the counter, but there is no counter. So we have infinite time, it means. OK, so we covered, so what we should remember, CSS Grid, Flexbox. Both are layout frameworks. Use Fetch. This XHR is no more necessary. Fetch is way nicer. Promises and asynchronous loading are already well integrated. And what I showed you also are JavaScript classes, which looks more or less like Java. Yes, everything. So method, you can specify media types, headers, or whatever. So we use this complete whatever. And forgot to mention this. Fetch is particularly interesting because if you use Fetch, behind the scenes, fetch events are emitted from browser, and this is crucially important because there is a thing called service worker. And the service worker in browsers is based on web worker. And the web worker is something like executor service in Java. So it is a thread pool, basically. And the service worker is a web worker with access to a cache. So what it could be relatively simple right now, relatively simple, it means I will have to look up the API because I don't do it every day. But I could set up a service worker, and what will happen? The fetch would ask the service worker, do you have the JSON already for me? I could establish the cache control on the microservice, and I could implement an offline app without any additional frameworks, because service worker is also part of the platform. So I think also standards are boring. In this particular case, is actually exciting because also it's an easy way to learn. There's only one service worker spec. There's only one fetch spec. So I don't have to read books and tutorials. I just look at the spec and know exactly how the API has to look like. Very good questions. Other questions? The CSS Next, it is a kind of preprocessor with the polyfill, but the main trick is they're using the future attributes of CSS. So over time you can ditch the preprocessor. Yes, and I think it's part of post CSS, like the post processor. Post processor, no preprocessor, post processor. Very good. Other questions? No other questions. Okay, so it works surprisingly well. So what I would like to do is to show you another standard. We have 10 minutes, so I prepared before the session something even more exciting. And what it is, everything converges actually to here. And whatever you're doing right now with Angular, React, or whatever, everyone tried to create a component. And I created a component Happy Duke. And this is, if you look closely on your Angular 2 code, on the Angular 1 there were directives, and Angular 2 is actually templates. There is actually one template tag already. And what you're actually doing, you create an HTML tags, which are replaced by some logic. And this is part of the standard. So the first thing is link rel import href duke HTML. This rel import, what it means, a web component, a standard web component gets imported. And the standard web component is defined like this. This is just a ECMAScript 6 or ES 2015 class. Class HappyDuke extends HTML element. HTML element is a standard element of the web browser, part of the browser DOM. And this connected callback is standard callback. It's not part of the framework. It's like post construct in Java or before in JUnit. And what I did here, connected callback, I said this inner text equals hello Java, and this inner text means I'm inside the DOM element already, so I'm setting myself, the content of the text. And then I'm observe the attribute with the name message, and the attribute with the message is here. By the way, in JavaScript we also have static get, and attribute changed callback is also part of the standard. So whenever someone changes the attribute, it will also change. I will get notified here. What you also here see, the $name, $old value, $new value. This is the way in the new JavaScript to replace the string interpolation. It's a nice way. And custom elements is also part of the browser. You can say custom elements.define happy Duke, happy Duke. This is the name of the tag, and the happy Duke is the class here. And you are set. So if I run it, and by the way, what I will use to run it, is this. So there's a browser sync as a nice tool. So if you develop HTML5 apps standalone, you would like to have the live synchronization with the browser, which is really nice. And I use the browser sync tool. This tool is included, I guess, in Angular CLI, but in Webpack, and you can just use this. So you install this node module browser sync, and this is a start the server, watch the source, start please Google Chrome, and there should be no notification on changes. So because I use it very often, I just start the script. And this is the hello Java, but the interesting part is the happy Duke here. So this is a true element. So this is the element from the browser. And you can see attribute change message null, hey imported. So the message was changed from null to hey imported, and the Duke was initialized. And he couldn't load it the favicon. This is the error, actually, which is not a big deal. But the coolest thing is with the browser sync, now I can go here and, of course, change something. Just, you will see it. So if I just hello Duke is Duke, so it just immediately changes the state. So you don't need, fancy frameworks, webpacks, whatever. This is also, just 2 files and a standard. And this standard is called web components. And there are actually many components out there. So if you go to webcomponents.org, these are ready-to-use components built on this standard. And I don't know whether you know, for instance, Vaadin. This is like a Java framework. What they did, they decoupled the web components from Vaadin itself. So if you search, for instance, for Vaadin, you will find Vaadin core elements, and the Vaadin grid should be somewhere. Vaadin grid is a really nice and powerful table. And for us Java developers, nothing new, but the JavaScript developers really like, for instance, Vaadin elements, and they focus full on the web component standard, for instance. Also, all the Google elements, maps, or whatever can be already included as web components. So what you get with web components? First, the API. So I'm a larger project in a bank, and we had trouble building performant UIs. And the first question is, how to interact. What is the API between, a widget and the app? And here is crystal clear. It's the attributes of the element. And if someone changes the attributes, you get notified. What also cool is, there is a scoping. So there is a shadow DOM. Whatever you do in the shadow DOM, in the CSS, it's not visible from outside, so it cannot leak it, just like a private component styling. So everything is solved, which is not solved templating. So what you will need, still a framework to replace a placeholder with the value, or go with this approach. What I did, it works perfectly in web components as well. So what you could do, of course, you could define your elements here, standard elements. Look them up with document query selector and change the values. This is what we did for years in SWT, JavaFX, and Swing. So it's exactly actually the same coding. Okay, we have 4 minutes. Everything blinks here. Questions? 4 minutes questions. For developing the applications. It's like a built-in server which synchronizes my browser, my editor with the browser. Browser sync. Pardon? How large application can it support? Fairly large. I mean, there was several, I mean, HTML5 applications should be not that large because no one will use them. But, I mean, no, this browser sync is, I mean, what means production? This is not a server. This is your development server, but we use it all the time, and there were no performance issues. And it uses WebSockets behind the scenes, so it tells the Chrome update just this, and this is very efficient protocol. It's called browser sync, so I will show you. And usually the browser sync is a part of larger framework. You can use it directly. It's very simple. So I use just alias and use it right away. This is executable, and this was did the trick. Okay, other questions? What's the support for the web components right now? The custom elements supported everywhere. What is controversial is this import link. And the cool story in web components is there's only one polyfill supported by everyone. So there is a Polymer project from Google, which I also use, and what I like in the Polymer 2.0, not 1, 2.0, is the goal of the project is to disappear, that in one day they will be replaced by the standards, which is a really nice idea. And the only difference, Polymer and this HTML element I did right now, you would extend from polymer.element and not HTML element. So this would be the difference. And the thing is, Polymer 2.0 uses web components polyfill, and I think Mozilla Xtext and Bosonic, I think, there are several frameworks, and all of the frameworks use the same polyfill. And the polyfill is on GitHub, and all frameworks are using this. So in older browser, it's not supported. With the polyfills, it is supported. And the controversial thing is, as I said, import link rel, because there is now dispute, should we use import, what I showed you in JavaScript, or this link rel. This is not set in stone right now. Yes. And does it work? Polymer 2, yes. I mean, what means, yeah, it works. I mean, what it means works. If it's Internet Explorer 4 on ZX Spectrum, probably not. But I mean, in my environment, it worked well enough. We did, yeah. Yeah. And before this, last year and a few years ago, I used React a lot. So really nice. This is not a framework, it's a UI library. And Angular 2 looks to me like J2E from 1945 without any convention of a configuration. So whatever you do, you have to do it 5 times in all places without any, don't repeat yourself or whatever. So I don't get it, but let's see what happens. And by the way, web components and Polymer, for instance, YouTube was migrated to Polymer. So if I ever saw YouTube, this is Polymer web components. It is not that trivial. Okay, any other questions? 1 minute, ask questions. Pardon? My clients, my job is not, to convince clients to do something like this. What I told them, it works like this. So in one client, they use, Angular 1 with crazy dependencies on Angular 1. They cannot even upgrade to Angular 1.5. Now they would like to create a new project which has to be included in the old project and doesn't work. So they ask me what to do. So okay, if we use Angular 2 right now, you already know that every half year you will have to migrate because there will be breaking changes every half year. So if you're okay with that, we go with that. I'm consultant, perfect. Every half year we have something to do. Or we can use this. And this sounds crazy a bit, but if you're a Java developer, you are okay with that. I would say in 2 days, you know exactly what to do. And what I really like about this approach, there is only one clear way, how to approach this. There's only one standard, not 50 frameworks. And if you know that whatever Angular does and the others, everyone has to rely on this API anyway. So this is a thing for me, is this exactly the same freedom I see right now, what I saw in 1999 if J2E came out. I say, cool, the first time I can just focus on the spec and forget all these frameworks, vendors, whatever, and exactly what I see right now, I focus on ECMAScript 6, which looks like Java to me. Of course, it's not that object-oriented like Java, and behind the scenes there are still functions, but is it good enough? And experience from other developers to really like the approach. It's not like they told you are crazy, and they like, the clear path. This is a very important thing. Otherwise, I don't know whether you saw React, Angular, and Ember, for instance, they're complete different beasts. I mean, if you look at React, it looks completely different to Angular 2. And by the way, Angular 2 looks completely different to Angular 1, and Angular 2 is actually more similar to React than to Angular 1. So it's crazy world. Exactly what we had, 18 years ago in Java. Very good. Other questions? Completely different? No, because there was no reason right now. And with Java EE, we have thin wars, and with thin wars we can deploy faster, and deploy faster means more productivity. Also, it's more boring, it's more productive. But this is what I showed last year. So if you watch the video I use all the time, or if you like, minus 50 seconds, but they told me they forgot to introduce the speakers, so I have a little bit more time. So Docker file. So what I usually do is say from, let's say, airhex wildfly, and you can still ask questions. So this is copy. My philosophy is, if you rely on standards, whatever standards you have, standards are boring because they are slow, but they are good enough. And if you rely on standards, there's no migration. You can fully focus on business logic. And this is my approach for years, and it worked perfectly well. And what gives me a little bit more confidence, more and more startups are also behind the idea, because they say we could, create a research project or just implement the first use cases in few minutes. Standards, yeah. Maven clean deploy. Keep it simple. Clean install. Sorry, clean package, or not even clean, just package. And Docker build -t devox fun dot. So now it's built, the Docker image, Docker run -d, and this is full stack CentOS 7, JDK 1.8, Whitefly full 10.1 probably, -d, -p, h2, hopefully is open, 8080, minus name, fun. It was, sorry, devox fun, I hope. Devox fun. Docker PS, wait a second. What I'm always done with his thing. Localhost 8282, this is Whitefly. And fun, now we have a microservice with fun with 33 degrees, which does something. And Docker history, devox fun. What you can see here, only the 58 seconds ago, I created the image with 6 kilobyte. So the whole app is 6 kilobyte. And Whitefly, JDK, and CentOS 7 were not built for weeks. And this is the reason why I use Java EE, because with Java EE we have deployment. And with the deployment, there's clearly separated the deliverable, which is the thin war, and the platform changes very, very rarely. And more we have to push to the clouds. And if you push 6 kilobyte, it's significantly faster than pushing a fat war or fat jar. So this is, but if I wouldn't have the clouds, or if there would be no Docker, I would probably use Spring Boot, or there is Whitefly Swarm, Payara Micro, or Application Composer in Tommy. Exactly the same story. But never use them as well. Okay, sorry, other question? Developers. So if I show them developers and they say, okay, you are crazy, no, we would really like to have Angular, so okay, what I can do? Then the team always wins. But Angular 2, only we have, okay, Angular 2 and React is what I can answer. In Angular 2, the problem of React is crazy fast, and React Fiber even faster. So you can have crazy, if you have a very complex application like a dashboard with lots of changes, React will have a crazy fast updates. So you could have incredible performance. In one project I suggested Angular 2, it was a huge project, it was a migration project. And with Angular 2 you can have modules. So we have one team, one module, and they were lazy loaded to a huge portal. So you saw absolutely the case for Angular 2. But this is one project out of 30. So we use Angular 2, and I could absolutely explain this added value of using Angular 2. But the project was crazy by itself because it was too huge, but what I can do. All other projects were React or standard web components. Perfect. Any other questions? So I didn't mention the backend too much because I did it for the last 5 DevOps. The next year we can push something to the cloud, whatever. But you saw how easy it is to create a Docker. To push it to the cloud is just, how expensive it is to push 6 kilobytes to the cloud. And if you would like to see it in YouTube, I have Amazon and Oracle Cloud and Elastic pushed to the 3 clouds and Java app full stack without any optimization. No app and Linux, no web profile, no micro profile, full stack, the largest possible server. This is also the experience with the largest possible application server.
Do you think there's no need for fat jars anyway?
I mean, in this environment, no.
But this environment is pretty simple. Are there cases where it's maybe useful?
If you don't have Docker or clouds, no containers, no clouds, and you have bare metal server, then fat jars could be interesting. The problem what I have with fat wars or fat jars is you build everything, also just 6 kilobyte changes. This sounds crazy to me. I don't get the idea why I should do this.
You can make this fast anyway. You can make the build fast still, even if it's...
Yeah, this takes 1 second, I think. They will never achieve this with fat war. I mean, whatever SSD you have or whatever, this is unreachable. And for me, it is the immediate feedback and fast loops is the most important thing, productivity. It's more boring, but I mean, it works and it's good enough. And if I show them, I mean, I got so many Java 8 projects because my way to show how it works. I don't go to the clients and say, hey, look, we have 20 APIs and we have a decoupling, whatever. No one cares about your decoupling. You say it has to be fast and has to be well documented and the team has to be on your side. Cool. Any other questions? I think now it's -7 minutes, so I think the speaker introduction was shorter than this. So thank you for coming and see you next year with this or similar topic. So, and probably just HTML or JavaScript or whatever you like. So thank you and see you soon.